Very good. Again, my name is Martin Disterheft. Welcome again to this morning's webinar for Oracle Forms Reengineering and Modernization Alternatives. I've prepared the following agenda where we go through a quick introduction. Then we'll talk a little bit about Oracle Statement of Directions. I'll also highlight a few comments by Gartner with that regard about the recommendation and the future direction with regards to Oracle Forms. We'll then talk primarily about Oracle Forms Modernization Alternatives, about the potential upgrade process, and then also a migration process, for example, to ADF or Apex. Customer examples follow, and then with a Q&A. Talking about the Q&A, on the right side of your GoToWebinar control panel, you find a section called Questions. Please do not hesitate to post any questions in there. I'll be more than happy to address those at the end of the session. During the session, you all will be muted for now. Before we start, let me introduce the company PITS. For those of you who don't know, PITS is a very specialized product and service vendor, specialized in this niche area of helping organizations that have a heavy investment in Oracle Forms technology, Oracle Forms and reports and the surrounding technology. So we have done this for many, many years. The origin of the company, we have developed Forms since version 2.3, 3.0, and since then upgraded. So we have a very, very strong knowledge in the back office in our consultants about helping organizations to in all sorts of questions surrounding the technology around Oracle Forms. We have offices around the globe, and you can probably already guess the accent that you're hearing is from Stuttgart, Germany. That's the world headquarters. I myself, I live since 8 years here in Michigan, in Troy, Michigan. This is where our United States headquarters is based. And today's webinar primarily has been introduced and sponsored by our partner for the public sector, DLT Solutions. DLT Solutions is our exclusive reseller for the public sector in North America. Now, all those words that you see here on the screen, those are all potential activities, tasks where we as a company are being approached with. Primarily, these are topics around Forms upgrade, but also migrations is becoming more and more popular. Mobile technology is very popular, it's growing, but also like simple activities like how to document existing code, how to perform dead code analysis, zooming, resizing, user interface facelift, very popular. So I'm not going through each of those, but if you see anything on here on this screen that you say, wow, this is something I'd like to discuss in more detail that may not be covered in this part of this webinar, we'll be more than happy to talk to you after the webinar in a specific session. Or if you like, you can certainly raise any questions about this at the end of this webinar. Now, PITS, why PITS? PITS has, as I mentioned earlier, we have developed this specific skill set around Oracle Forms, and we have developed also a product around this skill set. Our product is called PITS.con, and I'd like to switch back and forth as part of this webinar between the product and the slides. That's, by the way, the reason also why I'm not going into presentation mode here at the beginning. But we will show you very well how efficient a tool-supported approach can be, especially when you talk about user interface modernization, but also for any kind of bulk change, mass change in your application. So on an average, if you're saying you want to upgrade to the latest version of Oracle Forms, this is something we can accomplish within typically a week. But also if you migrate to any other technology, for example to ADF, we estimate about 50 to 60% of acceleration compared to any manual approach. However, those days, those estimates vary based on complexity and individual business logic that is being developed. We therefore free our project budget, but what's most important from my perspective is that if you're using a tool like PITS.con, we can provide you a consistent quality across all your Forms module. If you address any kind of modernization initiative, you're very much dependent on the skills and experience of your individual developers and skill sets they have acquired over the years. So let's go into detail a little bit about TITSCON and the technical architecture. The reason why we can perform very efficient tasks for Oracle Forms, any Oracle Forms modernization initiative, is because we load all the artifacts around Oracle Forms and reports in a repository. All the Forms files, the ASCII files, the schema objects, they're loaded into a repository and are then being able to not only adjusted, changed, analyzed, and so on, and then export it back out into an API layer that through an API layer that allows you to reuse them again as you use them today on the file system for any compilation or other activities. So we are able to, you can compare this approach maybe with Oracle Designer. For those of you familiar with that product, Oracle Designer is no longer actively supported, but it was very prominent in the 90s about how to develop for many Forms customers who develop code based on Oracle Designer as a repository. Now, let's talk about Oracle's recommendation to customers in a nutshell. First of all, the key effort is to, and these statements are based on a statement of direction from 2012, and I'll comment a little bit. There was a very recent update on this statement just about this week, 2 days ago. But in a nutshell, the core principles stay the same, that Oracle is encouraging you to first come to the latest version, to the supported version of Oracle Forms by upgrading your existing, if you are on any of these versions that you see here, you are no longer supported. You've got to upgrade to the currently only supported environment, which is 11G R2. And then you have a lot of enhanced functionalities, capabilities that enables you to utilize elements that are exposed through WebLogic and other technologies. Once you're on this platform, then you can consider any kind of future plans into potential new architecture if you need to. This migration error is something you need to evaluate on a case-by-case if you really need to. There is no, and I can only emphasize this one not enough, there is no timeline of Oracle Forms, at least to my knowledge, by when Oracle Forms will be discontinued. So there will be new versions of Oracle Forms coming out, and therefore this is an optional step. If your business rules or if your business case has changed, that you might feel the need to go to a new architecture, to new technologies. But we will show you as part of this webinar also how you can maybe overcome some of these drivers for potentially going to new architectures within Oracle Forms itself. But the main driver we hear on the market in most cases is the dated user interface, the look and feel, and all this kind of more soft facts, not from a real business execution or business process execution. The main drivers for this is more that the end users feel that this technology is not really up to the par with the other web technologies. But as I said earlier, we may be able to show you a little bit about how you can maybe adjust some of your user interface already within Oracle Forms technology. But we'll go through all these alternatives that you have out there, at least to our knowledge, in more details in a little bit. I mentioned there was a most recent update just this week. I put an email here from Michael Ferrante, the Oracle Product Manager, a Principal Product Manager for Oracle Forms. And he posted a new link on OTN, which I will implement here. I'll show up a little bit. That's a new statement about a revision, I would say, to the statement of direction. It first of all highlights a lot of highlights again what are the newest features, enhancements of the current supported release 11G R2. Several of these elements are very much known for you, like integration to Access Manager and so on, and they are very good reasons already to migrate to 11G R2, just to have the capability of all these elements you see here. But then furthermore, this document will go into a recommendation section, highlighting again the fact what I just outlined, that you should always try to keep up with the latest version as close as possible. Don't lag behind for too many years. The more current you are, the more easier it is for you to go to the newest versions. So it really makes sense to stay and to upgrade to the newest and latest version. There's also reference to the Oracle Forms upgrade guide if you want to do it in a manual approach, but I'd like to show you later also an approach with a more automated way to do it in a very speedy way with a tool like PITSCon. Also a point about mobile solution assistance and needs. This is something we also specialize in helping in case you have a use case where you need assistance to expose business logic from your Forms application to make it visible in Oracle Forms, in mobile technology. This is something I show you a few case studies for this one as well. Now, the most important feature here probably where many of you are looking forward to read is about the future, the roadmap ahead. This is the first, I say, besides various slides that have been presented on trade shows, this is the very first one I see officially published on Oracle's website, where it's clearly stated Oracle Forms 12c will be part of the Fusion Middleware family, and there's also a timeline. We can expect the next release coming out in the next 12 months. So that's something very cool to know, that this is all planned, and you see some of those potential improvements. We have had a presentation by Michael Ferrante in March this year about these new features, and if you are interested to learn more about those, we have a recording of this available accessible via YouTube. If you're interested in that recording, we'll be more than happy to share with you the link to that, so you can learn a lot more about what's potentially integrated, included in your 12c, in a new version of 12c. Switching back to the slides, so that's about the latest and greatest about what's happening on the Oracle Forms world. Again, 12c is on the horizon, and I'd like to encourage you to read that note. We will share with you the links as part of a follow-up, so you don't need to write down that long URL I said earlier. Now, talking about an upgrade of Oracle Forms. For all those of you who are on an older version, to upgrade to 11G R2 is for PITS a very straightforward activity. This is what we have done for hundreds of customers around the world, and we feel very confident about accomplishing at least the core upgrade, no matter how many Forms modules you have within a week. We can do this by providing, as part of our license of PITSCon, a set of templates that accomplish this task very efficiently. So again, we have a repository-based tool where we load all the objects into a repository, and then we would apply those templates that do nothing else than a search and replace, like you're familiar with in Word or Excel. It's part of your code, and make the code compilable and workable very well in 11G, in the latest version. If you like, we can also, if you have already done an upgrade, we are more than happy to scan through your code. If you have missed something, maybe you have missed a function that should have been upgraded, there are functionality out there. They compile perfectly fine on 10G if you are already on 10G. But then if you move over to 11G R2, we have had situations, for example, database references that have been decommissioned in 6i that no longer work in 11G, but they did work in 10G, and they caused some issues when you upgrade from 10 to 11. But we'll be more than happy to catch those and find those, and also offer you a solution how you fix those. At this moment, I'd like to switch over to the product just to give you a small hint of how the application quickly can be upgraded. And for that purpose, you see here the tool PITSCon. We have on the left side a set of functional groups, functional modules. I'd like to start with outlining you just a glance into our repository. Again, as I said, we load all the objects in a repository. In this case, I've loaded about 7 Forms modules, but also libraries, menus, and so on. They will all be loaded in here. And if you like, in PITSCon, you can scroll down. For those of you familiar with Oracle Forms Builder, it's exactly, or it's more or less the same kind of look and feel. You go, you scroll down, you can go to your code, and you can display, and you can also edit and change code in PITSCon. So many of our customers, they are utilizing PITSCon as a replacement, if you would, for Forms Builder for certain tasks. because they see the advantage of having everything accessible immediately at their hand. Now let's talk about the upgrade. What the benefit is if having everything in a repository is you can search very quickly, not on a forms object by object level, but through the whole application at once. So just to demonstrate, I'm just picking a select statement here because I have many of them in my code. I have including a search for a certain statement, select in all libraries, in all menus, and including all the database objects and so on. And I can very efficiently run this scan through everything. For those of you familiar on the Unix side, this was one of the key or the initial features of PITSCON when Oracle switched from the 3.0 versions of Oracle Forms, where it still was text-oriented, 3.0 INP files. You were able to go into a VI editor and do a grep, and this is more or less exactly the same here, but on a binary file. So that was the key motivator to develop this those days when we switched the format from an ASCII file to a binary file in the source code. So you can really search very quickly through the application. You can select, you find all those statements where you have those. Select is maybe not the best command, but let's say, for example, you search for a built-in like show alert. You search for those, and you get a list back of where those are all located, and you find exactly where you have a certain built-in. Now, how powerful we have implemented it, you can search also only for certain statements with parameters. You can change parameters and so on, because I could replace easily any kind of search text with something else in here. And this is what we have made very easy to access for upgrade scenarios. If you go from 6i, from a client server, to the 11G, a 3-tier architecture, we can find all those critical functions that might cause an issue and replace them with whatever you have in there. And that's the only reason why we feel confident to get the majority of all those changes done in a very, very short amount of time. And not only the PL SQL code can be adjusted, also properties, or we search for runtime compatibility mode scenarios. For example, if you have developed your Forms application in 4.5 and you have kept it in runtime compatibility mode, we can find you all those Forms modules that use that settings, because this setting is no longer supported in 11G R2. So again, this was just a quick glance into the capability of our tools. As I said, for those of you who are considering also during that upgrade to 11G going to, let's say, Linux environments or switching from Windows to Linux, sometimes, not always, but sometimes the fonts that you have used in Windows might not be looking as good as it should on Linux. So we have also the capability to very efficiently change, for example, font names. Another great scenario how you can use our tool with property changes also is adjusting to the newest screen resolutions. When you developed your Forms application 10 years ago, most likely you had a lower resolution on your desktop, and these today, if you buy a new computer, you have a very high resolution monitor available at you. And if you open up the old Forms module, it's in the top left corner. What we are able to help you out is to very, very efficiently adjust the zooming, adjust the screen sizing in a ratio so we can zoom out the whole screen for you very quickly. That helps a lot. And we do this typically as alongside within that week of services for the upgrade, just to make it better visible, better approachable for your end users. So those are just a few. There's many more features in there that I can highlight about helping a developer making certain kind of decisions or hunting down errors. Like, for example, if you want to compare two Forms modules, you can very easily do this by selecting those and then see exactly where certain changes have occurred, left and right, where has a new object been introduced, where have properties been changed, where the source is different, and so on. So you can find these very, very, very quickly. So that said, I'd like to move forward with regards to the topic around user interface modernization. Again, if your motivation to potentially re-engineer or migrate your forms away from Oracle Forms technology. If it's only the facelift option, you have already a lot of capabilities inside your Forms environment. And we'll be doing shortly here another webinar on this topic alone, because if I would elaborate more on this one, we would easily extend this 1 hour that we have allocated for today. But just as a highlight here, we can very easily adjust, as I said, zooming of canvases. We can standardize, harmonize colors. We can highlight important fields, provide formatting masks, visual attributes to all the screens. And you see a few screenshots here on the right. Those screenshots, what we have done, for example, we have eliminated a toolbar and make the toolbar here on the left. We have changed the look and feel on the canvas. I can zoom in a little bit here so you see it probably better. It looks a lot more like a web page, even though it is still a Forms application. We talked recently to another organization. They even were looking into expanding, scrolling, making it scroll down, the functionality, expanding the canvas so you scroll down like you think you're really in a web page, and have it look and feel going through like you navigate from one page to another. But it's just a few ideas here, and there are many more ideas we have prepared. What we are recently offering is a user interface workshop. If you're interested in such an activity, it takes about 2 days, 3 days. We would come on site and help you identify or work with you on a prototype how your application could look like, and then we would estimate the effort based on our tool Pitscon, how we can quickly adjust those settings. So adjusting, for example, in this case, the canvas sizes, or making the colors look like this, or eliminating a toolbar and replace them here, these are all things that can be automated by our tool, and we can help you doing this very efficiently. So a user interface facelift like this doesn't mean that it can take a lot of months or years of work, and that's the only reason, because you may think that you have to adjust every single module one step at a time. No, because we have the tool capabilities of Pitscon, we can do this all at once, or we can accelerate those changes very, very efficiently. So what we also can do is, and let me go back to the tool Pitscon. I'll switch over to topic multi-language unless you're interested in it. We can address this later. But what I'd like to show you also what the tool's capabilities are with regards to analysis of your application and documentation of your application. For those of you who have the need to really work a lot, for example, with external developers, you get code delivered and so on, and you want to see what they have developed, what has been accomplished. What we can show you with our tool is all the dependencies that a certain application has in a visual form, and this has been very helpful for all sorts of scenarios. For example, in this case, we can show you in what form, what tables are being used. So what you see here is very easily a chart being displayed about from what trigger in a when button press trick, about what procedure you access certain kind of tables. So that's very powerful from a documentation point of view, because it's very challenging if you not only already have your Forms developer on staff, but if you try to hire a new Forms developer, it probably takes them a long time to understand all the dependencies. If they have it in a visual way in front of them, very, very powerful. Not only the table usage, the program units flow, we can show you that as well. Just simply showing you about from what block, about what procedure is being called, what are the flow of an application, more or less. Very, very powerful element to show about how an application is being structured and how the dependencies are within an application. Now, I'd like to highlight this topic of dependencies in a little bit later here, because we know what is being used in a Forms application because of that capability inside the repository to analyze all those dependencies. Now, since we know what's being used, if you do a vice versa, we already also know what's not being used, and we consider this as a dead code or unused object. Now, we can help you identify those dead code and unused objects and help you to eliminate those in a very, very powerful way. So you reduce the size of your code, the lines of code significantly, which help you in your overall maintenance of your application. Before we go there, and I'll show you an example of this in a little bit. Before we go there, however, I'd like to switch back to the slides and discuss the potential path forward for a migration. Now, what we see out there is that a lot of individuals that have advisors, or organizations have advisors, external advisors. They make recommendations. You must go their way, this way, or you should go this way. You have certain technology needs. For example, you do not have any skills close by that have forms know-how. You may only have, let's say, Microsoft know-how or technology, Java know-how accessible. Those are all valid reasons to go somewhere else. However, we strongly encourage you to first collect the facts. And by facts, what we mean, we want to help you to provide you all the information you need to make an educated decision. And educated decision for us means that we show you exactly what is the complexity of your forms application. How many lines of code do you have in your forms application? How structured from a software quality point of view, how structured has your application been developed? These are all components that makes it either more or less complex to migrate to another technology. And I'm jumping ahead because I want to bring up a reference from Grant Ronald. He put that in 2011 out there. No matter what decision you want to take, no matter where you want to go, it's always going to be a considerable effort and a very costly effort to migrate from Oracle Forms to something else. This is not as easy, as I said earlier, just to upgrade to the latest version. This can be accomplished in a few days and maybe weeks of time. The moment when you switch to a new technology, go somewhere else, it will be challenging. It will be more complex. It will be time-consuming. And you have to understand really the reasons and the business driver behind it to make it justifiable for you and your management to have spent this effort. Nevertheless, I want to show you now what could be a potential path forward on going to a new technology. And we have evaluated within PITS primarily Oracle technologies to migrate to. In this case, we already analyzed, we discussed going to 12c, ADF Java as the second one, or Apex. They're all pros and cons. They're all, and you can read those in the statement of directions, which is good for you. There is no clear, let's say, statement from our side or from our side what you should do. I'll put up a statement from Gartner. They made some statements in a document about Oracle Forms migration strategies, about ADF considering the least risky and often the least costly migration path forward compared to Apex. That it's a practical replacement it helps a lot of departments, a lot of use cases, but maybe not for the full breadth and depth of Oracle Forms toolset. So in other words, in short, they said it depends on what you have developed and how you develop it, but Apex is certainly also a viable solution to go to. Now, some screenshots. If you only look for the look and feel, you see you can draw beautiful screens or develop beautiful screens on Oracle Apex. But of course, if you're considering ADF, you have a lot more capabilities and functionalities available to go that route. So there's a lot of potential discussions, pros and cons, and we can. If you go to the statement of direction, there are some hints here and there about in what scenario you should do what. But again, as I mentioned earlier, we would recommend that you analyze your application first, and we offer an analysis service for you that where we can scan your application and show you the complexity and show you the dependencies to make really an educated decision about what you should do. Also, what we find out is organizations, for example, deciding for ADF, they say, oh, just help me, can you just migrate one application ADF, and we look at it and see how it does. We find it often cases that it takes a lot more than just having one class of Oracle to get to ADF class. We have developed a step-by-step process on how you do a successful transition into a new technology. You might replace this ADF with also Apex or others. This applies for all technology changes, that you first want to get familiar and make really a decision about, is ADF or is other technologies really the right or wrong way for your specific situation. We then propose for sure some kind of proof of concept before we go in the full breadth of the full application and migration. Now, what's also very, very important to understand or to recognize, if you are considering just to do a one-to-one replacement, if you have a form screen like this and you just I want to have this screen look exactly the same way in ADF or in Apex or whatever, there is no need for you to do this. There is no this does not make sense then to go forward from our perspective. It only makes sense if you really adapt the technology and the full breadth of features that a new technology like an ADF screen, in this case here, provides you. So what it means is you might not have a one-to-one migration from Oracle Forms over to something else. You will have a combination, let's say 2 or 3 of form screens can be combined in one ADF screen. So another level of complexity comes into play here, because you might consider then to combine and rearrange all the functional flow of your application. And I'm saying this not because we cannot do this generation. I show you just an example here on the left side. Right side is a Forms application, on the left is an ADF. This is something we can generate very easily for you based on our tool. So we could help you doing this, but we do not recommend it, because if you just do a one-to-one replacement, there's really no need to do it at all. Now, talking about the risks here, about migrating to another technology, there is always a significant risk involved if you switch technologies. The risk is various. It's from our perspective, primarily within the technology and the skill set of your team, development team, who's going to maintain and ramp up technology. So we follow in line with Gartner's recommendation that if you have a larger Forms application, and when I say larger, it's not how many Forms modules or reports have, it's more or less how many lines of code you have developed. We have examples where we have the same amount of lines of code in 20 forms, and another application has 200 forms. So it's not the matter of how many Forms modules you have, it's what kind of business logic you put in the Forms modules. And for that reason, we recommend to do it in a phased approach. And what a phased approach means is that you look at your application in a total. And by the way, this map of dependencies, this is something Pizzcon can produce for you, so you see what form called what other form and so on. Let me show you a quick example of also a very nice looking map of dependencies. This is for a prospect we had recently. You see exactly the open and new form calls between those different functional modules. If you would not have a tool like Pizzcon to visualize these, it would be very, very challenging for you to find out how this all is dependent together. But we can help you circling and identifying, we call them functional clusters. That means functional areas that belong together, and they can potentially be encapsulated and replaced with this other technology, whatever you may choose. So in this case, the overall application with ADF would still run in the back end with Forms 11G or with Apex and so on. And that's another very, very good reason to switch to the latest version of 11G R2, because only with 11G R2 you have the capabilities, or you have enhanced capabilities to integrate those new technologies over an application. Of course, also the capabilities to run a mobile application framework and combine those and extract business logic. You can really structure your application and say, this kind of feature functionalities we want to expose to the mobile world, this one we want to keep in the back end, and so on. And we have a few examples here. We want to show a utility company asked us to replace or to develop a mobile application based on an approval process, a workflow approval in Oracle Forms. So we took the business logic that was in Forms and put it into the database and created web services above this layer and having the same business logic accessed by the mobile application and the Forms application. So no need to change twice source code. We have the source code with the business logic in one place, and you call the same business logic from both areas. Now, the fun part here was also, after we designed the mobile, the tablet here, they really liked the look and feel so much, they asked us if we can adapt the look and feel from the mobile also on their existing form screens. So that's the reason why the mobile screen now looks very similar to the Oracle Form screens as well. Another example we did for another utility company in Detroit. They manage coal trains, and they have an existing Forms application. We're opening up a calendar in ADF. And again, because everything runs on the same WebLogic middle tier, we have authentication and parameter pass-through, and everything is incorporated and possible to implement. So it's a very, very tight integration. You open up on a certain record here, you come up with the same focus and error and on this train on this calendar app. You can then hover over here in the app. You see the data from your Forms application. You even can open it up on a mobile screen. Then this would be a web application running on a mobile. And then if you like, you can double click here on a certain train that was scheduled, and you open up the Form screen then as well. Very, very powerful. Again, another example on how you could implement the application in an integrated way between both technologies, Forms and in this case ADF. Now, to go that route, what we have done is we have developed a step-by-step guidance, a step-by-step approach. We structure the modernization process in 3 phases. The first phase is for us the most crucial one because it involves Oracle Forms purely. If you are considering going for some of your functionalities, like we described earlier, from Forms to ADF or any of those other technologies, the first step you got to think of is analyzing and structuring, prepare your code in Forms. And I mentioned earlier the dead code removal, unused object removal is one part of it, but also the business logic extraction. So let me switch to back to our live demo. We have here the module called Application Engineering, and we have one module here called Unused Object Analysis. The way it works, more or less, you click on your application, you can see you can run an unused object analysis, and you get then a list back of all the code, everything that's not being used. So in this case, there are some reports not being called because I haven't loaded them, but also parameters or program units that are in the Forms application, but they are not being used. So you could delete them. We highlight them primarily with an X here. We just mark them. There might be very good reasons to keep them in there for future reference or something else. So you could automate the deletion, but it's also something, a case-by-case decision of the developer to do so. On average, we have eliminated 20 to 30% of the source code with this. There's a lot of code that has been identified as dead code, and imagine if you can reduce the lines of code by 20 or 30% before you do a migration. This is 20 to 30% less effort you need to take to migrate to a new technology. So you can, by only this functionalities, you save a lot of time and money by cleaning out your application before you go somewhere else. Now the next step is then the capturing or extraction of the business logic. So what we can do is we can select, in this case, an application. Let's go, for example, and check out this canvas, what we have here. We have a screen where we have a department and employees, and we have a button, Calculate a Commission. So let's have a look at this screen, at this button, how it looks like. The When button, press trigger. Let's have a quick peek in there. You have global variables in here. You have references to fields, items that are on the screen, select statements, and you open up a procedure. What we can do now in Pitzcon is to protect that investment. If you want to, for example, make this available on a mobile screen, we can help you calculate these dependencies. You see now from this button the whole chain, what is being called in the sequence, and then we can transfer this whole flow into the database. We can do this, and what happens is we create a package now, and I can show you how the package looks like. Let's view the code. Let's scroll down to the initial procedure. All those procedures are being passed through, and the when button press trigger will be passed through with all the arguments you need to make it work. So the code will function immediately. There is certainly an enormous win from a quality perspective, also related to these activities, because if you are rewriting that PL/SQL code in Java or in something else, you really have to look behind, and if you capture all the code. In this case, we move only well-tested code back to database. We don't do change in the code per se. The only thing is execute the code in the database instead of in the forms trigger or procedure. Now, I hear already several questions. Well, but that's not working for everything because you have Oracle Forms built in and everything else. And you're correct with that statement. So we will help you in capturing those as well. You can go in a different screen and analyze the form, and you see here on the right side flags where you identify in what procedure you have certain kind of built-ins that may or not be able to move into the database. So in these cases, I agree, there needs to be manual intervention, or we can help you with, if you have a simple message button or something, some of these built-ins, we have workarounds that you can apply. But you see already in gray, those are the elements we already moved to the database. And the others here, you see exactly which one are not yet moved to the database. You can filter by, you can make a rule, for example, that you say, let's only move into the database only those elements where you have a SQL statement involved, and then you can transfer only the code where you have a select statement, or in this case, there's a select. If it makes sense or not, that really depends on, it's a case-by-case decision. But it's certainly the tool here, PITSCon, helps you to capture that business logic and to re-engineer your application with the core idea to separate the user interface from the business logic that you have in your application. So there's many more activities that I can show you. I'd like to highlight one more element before we switch back to wrap up the webinar on the slides. And that feature, that is our most recent feature, it's called user story, recording of user stories. We came to the conclusion, by talking to our customers, that sometimes when you have an existing form screen and you want to expose something to, let's say, a mobile screen or something else, that you only want to capture certain features of this. You don't want to capture, let's say, you don't want to migrate always to whole Forms application, maybe only that calculate commission button or something else. What we have done, therefore, is because it's sometimes challenging when you click a button, you don't really know what's being executed in the back end. And that's the reason why we came up with the capability of developing or tracking a user story. Now, what we do is, what we can do with PITSCon, you saw it earlier, we can search and replace code. So we took this capabilities to a next level, and being able to inject code at the beginning and then the end of every single PL/SQL code in all the triggers and procedures. And that's only temporary. We would then move this code to a test environment, or doesn't matter, it could also be a production environment, and you can then trigger or execute a certain user story, and we are recording everything that's happening behind it. So let me show you, in this case, how this works. We recorded a few steps here, and I can after clicking this when button press trigger, you see exactly the sequence of what kind of trigger, what kind of procedure. It doesn't matter if it's in a database or in the forms, is being executed. And we can show you also statistics on, this is our software quality metrics on how long it might take to rewrite this application or this certain procedure. But we show you statistics like, for those of you familiar with software quality metrics, cyclomatic complexity, Halstead volume, or maintainability index. Those are all metrics that I'll show you later in a different module. It's a different top subject of a webinar. But we display it to you so you understand where is the most time spent, and also how long does it take to extract this use case and move it into, let's say, another technology. So we can help you to record user stories and really show you all the PL SQL, all the packages, procedures, and the sequence, how this is being executed. Very, very powerful for re-engineering efforts if you like to dissect, if you like to really extract only certain part of your application and maybe not the whole application at once. At this moment, I'd like to just conclude the live presentation. Obviously, we then have the capabilities to migrate also into technologies like ADF. The migration itself, very straightforward. You select the forms, you specify certain naming conventions that you might want to see. You can specify if you want to migrate, translate PL SQL to Java, in what framework you want to generate this, and so on. And then you can generate this code, and you have then a fully functional, I take that back, you have then a fully capable project that you can open in JDeveloper and continue developing. Most likely you will have to do a lot of manual work here and there to get it finalized, but that's more or less related to whatever user interface, look and feel you want to pursue here. But at least we give you the plumbing and all the framework to do that, so you can go forward with that new technologies. And we have that for ADF, and we have this also available for Apex. The last element I'd like to highlight is a functionality, just on a side note, what we can do if you want to maintain and also re-engineer your application. We have embedded a source code formatting tool where you can select only certain forms modules, but you can also select one separate trigger, and then you can apply PL SQL formatting commands to that trigger, so you bring them in line and have the code nicely formatted and in use. We integrate here an external third-party product that is very capable and has a lot of functionalities, but you can clean out your code with PitsCon. What you also can do is we show you statistics about your application, about how your application looks like, how many lines of code you have where located. We show you statistics about the current, let's say, all the way down to your program units and to your where you have create a record, your CRUD commands, insert, update, deletes. You see exactly what tables are you accessing with how many reads, how many update, deletes, and so on. So we show you all those information. You see very easily also which tables do you still need. There are sometimes we come to an application where we find that 10% of the tables, they have been created, but they never really are in production. No one is using them. You find them very easily. Another really powerful application, what we can do is that we can show you also the capability of these source code metrics that I showed you earlier with regards to Halstead volume and cyclomatic complexity and all this. We show you where is your code that's most challenging to maintain and that needs work for you to address. So lots of information in here, a lot of ways to interpret and to use them. Programming rules are also a new functionalities we have. We can scan your code for common practices, best practice of PL SQL code. You can add rules in here where you say I wanna see my violations. Also, if you work with external partners, if you wanna have this as a acceptance criteria that you check your application or your source code that's being delivered against source code violations or rules violations, you can scan all the PL SQL code. Very powerful tool to analyze and to improve the overall functionalities of your and maintainability of your application. naming convention. I'm not going in all the details here. There's a lot more I can show you here in source code, but at this moment I'd like to switch back to the slides and wrap up with a few examples of customers. Especially in the public sector, we've been around with DLT solutions now since 6-7 years, and we have a lot of companies, organizations working with us successfully. We have long-term contracts with some of them where our consultants even stayed for more than 3-4 years on site, but also very short-term where we just go in and provide a training for our tool, and then your organization can perform the work themselves. A few examples, I know these are commercials, where we upgraded very easily a few hundred forms modules and upgrade to 11G R2. You see about the time frame it takes. A great example about maintenance. This company wanted to change a database column, and we helped them, and they saved a significant amount of time there by us to analyze all the dependencies inside the application. From a healthcare, we migrated them to ADF, just about 50 forms. Took us about 6 months. Again, the number of forms is not relevant, it's the number of lines of code you have in there. So just another example here. Going mobile, a lot of organizations are considering this and enabling or making functionality from forms also accessible through mobile screens. We have done this for many of these organizations and even enhanced then the screens. State of Mississippi, for example, we've developed a very comprehensive set of teacher appraisal forms where you have a tablet in your hand as a principal, as a teacher, and you can go through a questionnaire and fill out information, and when you're back at your desk, you sync it back with your database. AR, DT Energy, I showed you those already. If you have a handheld scenarios, we have scenarios where we can replace handhelds that run on Windows CE or older technologies, and Form 6 ran perfectly fine on there, but with the newest technology, we can help you there as well to make this happen. There are many more customer examples. Just browse OTN, search for PITS. You find a lot of other examples out there. What I would like to leave you today is a few potential next steps, if you like. First of all, if you have an older version of Oracle Forms that's older than 11G R2, we'll be more than happy to come on site at no charge to upgrade you and to show you the tool in depth. You can then choose if you like our tool and you see the results, if the upgrade worked to your satisfaction, and you can then move forward with us. That's one option for those of you interested in Forms upgrade. If you're interested in a user facelift, we'll be more than happy to come on site as well for 2 or 3 days to do a workshop with you where we go through your application and provide a prototype or so you can show it to your end users if they like the screen, and then we can provide you a proposal on how long it will take based on PITSCon to implement all these changes. And if you're considering going, for example, to ADF or Apex, we'll help you also. We can provide you an estimation analysis that gives you an analysis about all those steps. We only talked about phase number 2, phase 2 and 3. Those are the upgrade and the fine-tuning, but we'll give you basically an analysis, an estimation of how long it takes from the beginning to the end to get there. You will get a report about what is the complexity, what is your forms. I briefly browsed through. You have lines of code in this report, how many program units, how many triggers, and so on. You see also how much time saving there could be by utilizing a tool like PITSCon, how the complexity changed after you remove the unused object. From an equal distribution here, you see after removing the unused object, you have a lot more lowest, in this case, this customer had a lot higher ratio of low complexity forms compared to before. With that said, our tool, as you saw, consists of many modules. You don't need to license all at once. You can pick and choose which one you are interested in. We didn't talk today about source code analytics. We talked just a little bit about, source control management. We didn't talk just a little bit about source code analytics. There are many other functionalities you might be interested in. We'll be more than happy to provide you a quote and an estimate. But at this moment, I'd like to conclude it with an overview about our other software and services that we provide. We can help you with any kind of installation configuration of your middleware stack, installation WebLogic, SSL, Oracle Access Manager integrations, but certainly also development activities with Oracle Forms, ADF, or mobile, or certain trainings if you're interested, for example, in an ADF beginner training for Oracle Forms developers, very popular training requests. With that said, I'd like to see what are the questions. I see there are already a few questions there. So let me see if I can respond to some of those. The first question, yes, there was a question about at the end if there will be all the slides and the links that I refer to, if they will be published. Absolutely. We will publish them and we will send them out to all the attendees where you can download them. And also this webinar has been recorded, so you may also play a recording of this webinar to your colleagues if someone has missed it in your organization. Is there any other question? I'll wait a little bit. I know was a lot to take in here. Don't be hesitant. Just also, if your question are more in depth, if you would like to have a separate webinar from us where we maybe do an in-depth tool presentation that's not as quick as today, we'll be more than happy to schedule something with you. So there's another question. Is there any Oracle Forms trigger equivalent in Oracle ADF? I think that question goes very much in detail about how Oracle ADF is structuring and dealing with source code and how the model view controller pattern is being mapped to Oracle Forms. I'd like to address this maybe in a one-on-one with you about it, because I would like to have one of our technical colleagues on my side that can help you understanding how the mapping is taking place. But we do have extensive documents about how certain forms applications or triggers are all being mapped. I don't have them handy in my slide deck here, but I'll be more than happy to share this with you. Very good. Anything else? So if I don't have, I keep on online for a couple more minutes here. So please do not hesitate to post any questions, or you feel free also to call our colleagues here. You have Joel Bell as your point of contact from sales. You see the phone numbers, and also don't hesitate to send us an email, a follow-up email. We'll be more than happy to address any questions you may have. There's a great question. If we will be attending this year's Kaleidoscope, I should have added this slide into it as well. Of course we will. Please join us at this year's Kaleidoscope in Hollywood, Florida. So this is a great event. You have a lot of peers that you can discuss with, including Michael Ferrande. You will have a lot of opportunities to chat with other organizations around Oracle Forms topics. So please join us at this year's Kaleidoscope. Thanks, Michael, for reminding. There's a question, is Oracle Forms 12c the latest version of Oracle Forms? I think I mentioned at the very beginning, so far there has been nothing that I have seen or read or heard that there is any discontinuation date announced or done. And also, if you read that link that I shared earlier, it even mentioned in there, there will be, oops, this page is quiet, there will be a future version. They're considering also additional versions in the future. But again, this is something, if you upgrade to 12c, you should be safe for another at least 5 to 7 years, again, from a support perspective. So I think discussing that topic all the way to 2030 is maybe a little bit pushing it, but maybe Michael Ferrante can talk to that part when you visit us at Kaleidoscope. I just got a word from Michael Ferrante. He's also part of the webinar. Let me read it. We at Oracle are accepting new feature requests for versions that will follow 12c. So please share ideas on the forums of OGN. So here it is. So if you have any new ideas about what you want to see in Oracle Forums 13, 14, or whatever the naming convention versioning will be, absolutely go ahead and share those thoughts with Michael directly or on the OGN here. All right, I think we're coming to an end of that session. I'd like to thank you all for your time today. And again, as I said, if you'd like to get in touch or have more details, please do not hesitate to contact us. We're more than happy to schedule a separate session. Thanks very much and have a good day. Bye.